Welcome back to the Tectonic Takes podcast. I'm Ivan here with Devin and Abram. Devin, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How about you, Ivan?
I'm doing pretty good too. Today was my second to last day teaching my summer class at College of Marin. So after that, I get a few weeks off before starting the new semester, the fall semester this August. Abram, how are you doing?
I can't say I'm doing too great. I came back from my vacation and I got sick like immediately. Um, so if anyone listening hears my voice and thinks that something's off, it's because it is off. But you couldn't keep me away from doing this podcast. I'm gonna be here analyzing the Quakes no matter what.
Yep.
So
We're happy to have you, and we're glad that you're doing okay and feeling good enough to join us here. Um, so we were really excited for the Leagues Cup. I'm still am from an MLS and Liga MX fan, like bird's eye view perspective to see how it all shakes out. Unfortunately for the San Jose Earthquakes, though, this result could potentially be an OHKO or one hit KO because losing to Portland, this was the game that was circled in the calendar for this Leagues Cup. Is like whoever doesn't win this game is going to Tigres next, and most likely that's it, two and done for this Leagues Cup. Let's take a look at the lineups for this game. So Portland with a 4-3-3, David Bingham in goal, a back four of Mosquera, McGraw, Zuperich, and Bravo. Their midfield three of Diego Chara along with Evander and Paredes, Dejan Asprilla and Yimi Chara on the wings, and Jaroslav Niezgoda up top. And then for the San Jose Earthquakes, they pretty much used their strongest possible lineup. Daniel in goal, Rodriguez, Beeson, and Trauco. I guess, Beeson, Mensa, maybe not the strongest possible, but Beeson seems to be winning that position battle there. Acapo, Grezzo, Yule, and Skane as the midfield four. So this is a 3-4-3, which the Quakes have been doing well in a couple of the previous games. And then, of course, Espinoza, Bobasi, and Cal as the front three. And the Quakes we saw off the bench, Securius, which introduced a lot earlier than expected due to a Skane injury. And then we saw a little bit of Paul Marie, Useni Buda, and Benji Kikanovic. And interestingly, no Tommy Thompson, who has been appearing a lot off the bench for the Quakes this season. It was all set up for the Quakes to at least go for a tie, and if it went down to penalties, so be it. But despite their strong start to the beginning of the game, it kind of all went undone with the Evander wonder goal. But first, let's talk about the injury to Jack Skane. Devin, what was your reaction when you saw that?
Well, it seemed like Jack Skane may have just had like a one of those subtle injuries where you fall down wrong on like a leg or whatnot. But the longer he stayed down, the more serious it sounded to the Quakes fans. And getting subbed off before the second half even begins is one of those unlucky feelings. And given it is also Jack Skane, he's one of our best midfielders right now, and his ability to move into space in the middle and find space and find the gaps between our opposition midfielders has been absolutely incredible the last couple of games. So losing him and watching him, walk off the field for a substitution definitely it sank my heart a little bit.
Yeah, especially when it seemed like he was really clicking these last few games, playing very well in a new position that he adapted to. Abram, as well as Skane, both Espinoza and Bobasi picked up some injuries. So, your thoughts on the injury situation as a whole?
yeah, so thankfully, Abovasi will look like he was able to keep playing for the remainder of the match. He kind of like slid and like his knee kind of like bent too much on itself, and that's really painful for someone who experienced that myself. Um, it could be something that comes up in the near future that but if he says he can play, I would like to keep him on the field. Unfortunately, Espinosa was not so lucky, and we had to pull him out. Um, and that is the more worrying one to me of the three, because Espinosa, without him, we are barely a soccer team. Obviously, that's like an exaggeration, but he obviously our big player, our only All Star, and it's a worry. But I think that it didn't look super serious. I think that he was running a lot that game, and he's been playing 90 minutes consistently for us for a while. So it was probably just like a load thing where he's been running too much, and I think it was going to happen at some point. But hopefully
Yeah.
he'll come back soon.
Right. So we'll wait and see with injury reports and the lineup that comes up this Sunday for the Tigres game. Both goals that Portland scored were really good. The first one was definitely felt against the run of play because the Quakes were starting to find their groove. Jeremy Abobasi had a chance. He made Bingham work to keep that one out. Kid Cowell was doing very well, and he's always under a microscope for his decision making in the wing. I felt like there's a little bit of classic Kid Cowell moments and then some improvements regarding that decision making. But unfortunately, it's a simple game. The other team scores, you don't. It doesn't matter what else happens. So, any other thoughts on this game? Because aside from the goals, there wasn't much, and the injuries, there wasn't much of note, Devin. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we can always narrow it down to individual performances and
Oh yeah,
possible tactics, but I think especially for Cade Cowell, now that you mentioned him, he performed pretty well in the first couple of minutes of the game. He started pretty comfortable, and then the longer the game progressed, the more you could see he was trying too much. He was dribbling too much. There were players open either behind him or adjacent to him. I think he cut inside a lot, which is his favorite thing to do. Same thing for Espinoza. But after he cut inside and he found himself some space, he also tried to cut back into pressure, and that's when you can tell that he lost the ball. So it's also one of those things that Leach even mentioned. It was either Leach or Lucci had mentioned that they're trying to get Cade to be a little more decisive
decisive.
in
Yeah,
his on the ball performance. So I think you'll see a little bit more improvement from Cade. However, coming back from the U.S. national team, you would think that you'd see a little bit, you'd see more consistency, or yeah, we'll say more consistency in Cade Cowell, but it wasn't the case, at least later in the first half and second half of the game.
yeah. Abram, any standout performers for you?
I wouldn't say stand out. I think that when you lose a game in this fashion, it's hard to pick anyone that stands out. Actually, I thought
Yeah,
Beeson was pretty good. I
I
thought
thought.
he made a lot of blocks. I
Yes.
think he made that one with the chest. He did get beat for the second goal, so that's unfortunate. But someone that I did want to point out was Nico. Uh, what an awesome player to have on the bench when you need him, right? Very skillful player, very willing to fight for the team, whether we're losing 2-0 or winning 2-0. Devin and I were talking in the Discord about his performance. We're saying that the only thing that we wish he would do better is he kind of like drops really deep to get the ball and trying to keep things moving. You can see he gets a little frustrated when he drops so deep and they don't give him the ball. They choose another pass. I kind of wish he would play as more of a 10 and like get the ball up in the half spaces where Jack Scahan likes to do, kind of higher up the field, and then use his really smart decision making and technical skill to like make things happen closer to the goal. And I think that we would have had more opportunities if that were the case.
Right. Another player that I thought stood out was Miguel Trauco. I think that he's just super reliable, whether it's offensive or defensive, and he has the green light to shoot. Like he's not going to score a banger every game, of course, but just knowing that there's that anticipation whenever he touches the ball, it's a good thing to have exciting players like Miguel Trauco in this team. And we'll talk a little bit about roster construction and transfers and what the other teams around the league are doing regarding the roster construction rules of MLS. But ultimately, the Quakes, they have to get a little creative with the players that they recruit, and they got to get the most out of them. And I think that's what's happening with Miguel Trauco. Any other takeaways from that match before I kind of wrap up this game and then we move on to our next topic?
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate the Acapo and Espinoza duo on the right side.
Yeah.
I really think that's one of the best duos that we'd seen in a incredibly long time for the Quakes. The way that they're able to pass, overlap, underlap, their fluidity and movement on the right side generates so much attack for this team. On the left side, you don't really see too much offensive third movement with Cade Cowell and Miguel Trauco or Paul Marie or whoever's on the left hand side.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of just sole Cade attacks. However, Espinoza almost directly encourages Acapo to move forward and overlap and make these sort of plays that opens up space for each other. And I think that's beautiful because that's exactly what we need to see in a creative, 3-4-3, 4-3-3 team that we've been seeing recently. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Acapo and Espinosa.
Yeah. I think that you make some good points, and that's why we do have to rely on that side. It is the more creative side, whereas Miguel Trauco and Cade Cowell possess a lot of individual brilliant qualities. Maybe they haven't just had that same amount of success combining as the other side has. And it's interesting because, both Cowell and Espinoza have been in this Quakes team for a few years now. And then you have two relative newcomers with Acapo and Trauco. So the fact that one pairing has had more success than the other, despite being in a similar timeline, is something worth noting. My final thoughts specifically on this match, give credit to the Portland Timbers. Maybe, I started to underestimate them a little bit, thinking, okay, we beat the Sounders. Portland, they're not as good as the Sounders this season. Yes, we're going to Providence Park. That's always a really tough place for the Quakes to win. But if we're going to do anything in this tournament, this is something that we had to find a way to win. And maybe I was trying to will that into existence, but Timbers, they are a good cup team. Gio Savarese has a reputation for being a great cup leader. He helped lead Portland Timbers to the MLS's back tournament during the early stages of the COVID-19 pandemic when MLS was just returning from action. And if there's any league where you can succeed being a cup specialist, it's Major League Soccer, especially now that there's 9 playoff spots in each conference. You don't have to be great. You just have to be not horrible, make the playoffs, and then start knocking teams out one by one. Maybe the Portland Timbers, if they get to the playoffs, which, may or may not happen, they can go on a bit of a run because that's just how good he is in those situations. And you look at the roster, it's not a bad team. I think that it's fair to say that the Timbers have been underperforming relative to the quality of players they have on the roster between the Chara brothers, Darren Esprilla, Felipe Mora, Evander, Darius Zuparic, and one last player I'll mention is David Bingham. We gotta give him credit. Quakes fans have mixed feelings about him for a lot of different reasons, but for him to be able to win that goalkeeper job back against Ivasic, it shows that he still got enough quality to be a decent goalkeeper in this league. He performed well. He kept a clean sheet, and we'll see if Portland Timbers continue to rely on him and he can continue to step up. Good for him. But that's pretty much what I have to say about that game. It's definitely a near fatal blow, not entirely mathematically just yet, but just realistically, it's a one-hit KO. It feels like this is a chance to ensure that you would advance from this group of 3 into the round of 32, and now it's looking pretty dire. But some other results that stand out from this Leagues Cup, we got to start with Inter Miami. So they were very impressive in the opening game against Cruz Azul. They scored before Messi and Busquets were on the field in that first half. And then they come into the game. Cruz Azul get one back. And then, it's just like a Hollywood script at that point. Abram, how did you feel when Messi scored that last minute free kick goal?
Oh my god, that was so. I was in the Discord and I was like, he's not going to score because that would mean that would be scripted. Like if he scored that, that's like not real. You know what I mean? It was like too good to be real, and I was just like, there's no way because that it's not allowed to happen that well. Outside of the movies. Um, but it's messy though, so of course it did happen, and he looked so happy. He looked really excited to be part of this team and in this new environment. His family looks really happy. Uh, what a goal it was! I don't think I think a lot of keepers would have really struggled to save that. It was a great free kick in a really. It was like the last kick of the game, basically. Some people were doubting whether or not it was a foul because he hadn't touched the ball yet. It doesn't matter. The contact was on him. There was contact on him, and that's what a foul is. You know. So yeah, great moment. I don't think that any of us will forget that. Long after Messi stops playing, definitely a great moment for Inter Miami fans too.
Yep, Devin, this was just as perfect as an introduction Messi could get while playing for Inter Miami as possible, right?
Oh, absolutely. The first thing you do in your first game is score a last second banger, and then the very next game you go on and score a brace and an assist at the same time. You're already left with 4 points in 2 games. Like I don't know, I don't know how much more of a performance you can ask from Messi, really.
Yeah,
Um,
one encore from that. Like he set the bar high for himself with that free kick goal, and then all he does in the next game is 2 goals and an assist. And for any other point in Inter Miami history, the game that Robert Taylor had, that would have been monumental too, and he still had a great game. But because of the player that is his teammate now, Lionel Messi, now that is the headliner for now and forever in Inter Miami. And unless Inter Miami don't make the playoffs, they are pretty much contenders now for any other competition they are considering it. We spoke a little bit before we started recording, trying to figure out who the pretenders and contenders were in this League's Cup. And then we realized a bunch of teams still haven't played once yet. Most teams have only played once. So it's just like Inter Miami for sure is in the mix to win, and then everyone else, we'll see. But Inter Miami, they look like a team reborn with Messi and Busquets. I compare it to Tampa Bay Buccaneers before and after Tom Brady. They went from mediocre to now they're Super Bowl contenders. And then with Tom Brady retiring, they're mediocre again. So for Inter Miami fans, they're hoping the clock doesn't strike midnight too soon, that they get at least a few years of Messi magic. But for however long it's going to be, Messi and Busquets in the picture. You have great complementary pieces in the attack with Robert Taylor, Joseph Martinez, and Leo Campagna. Uh, you've got some solid, international level defenders. Yedlin's still in the U.S. men's national team picture. Kamal Miller for Canada and Drake Callender as a goalkeeper on the U.S. men's national team radar. And with more Messi friends on the way, like Jordi Alba, maybe Luis
yep.
Suarez, who knows what kind of rules they'll be able to create for that to happen. It's scary. I'm kind of, in a way, like, I'm bummed we don't play Inter Miami this year, but I'm kind of relieved too. This new Inter Miami juggernaut, it's going to be pretty interesting. And you have their observations on this reborn MLS franchise, Devin or Abram.
yeah, no, I agree. It shows you exactly what a singular talented player like Messi or Ibrahimovic or Evander or big name players like that, how much impact they have coming into like a mediocre or less than mediocre team, especially for Miami. They haven't won in like 2.5 months, and now they're already on a roll, winning 4-0 against the Atlanta United
Yeah,
and Cruz Azul. Like it shows you big name players provide a big impact for those teams. Um,
right.
but yeah, you're absolutely right, Ivan.
Yep. Abram, any final
Also,
thoughts on Inter Miami?
yeah, can I just say how shockingly bad they were before the sub? I was watching and like they were insanely bad, giving the ball up multiple times. I thought it was like maybe because they're playing Cruz Azul, but then you remember they're at the bottom of the MLS charts. and it showed. Like that was my first time watching them, right? And
Hmm.
they were so bad. And then Busquets comes on, changes everything. He is such an impactful player for them in their midfield. They just kind of like give it to him, and he's going to sort it out. And then on the other side of the halfway line, you have Messi, who's same thing. He's just give him the ball. As soon as Messi got on the field, they gave him the ball like 5 times in a row. He was just trying to make a pass. They're like, no, take it back, and he is the only player in the world probably who can receive the ball that much and knows what to do with it every single time because he's such a special player. So definitely a lot of fun to watch.
It was kind of silly how many people I saw on social media doubting Sergio Busquets' ability to translate to the physical nature of the MLS. Do people not remember that he was an integral part of that tiki-taka Barcelona midfield? Sure, he's not Iniesta or Xavi, but he was still pretty darn good right behind them, allowing them to do Iniesta and Xavi and then further forward Messi things. So Busquets is one of the most intelligent players in our generation, like in the generation
Of
that we've
course,
grown
yeah.
up watching soccer. So he's going to figure out MLS, like obviously. And many people are now, the debate is now shifted from who's the bigger cheat code, Busquets passing or Messi's dribbling. Like it's just like, so just to make sure we give Busquets his flower as well, because he's similarly a game changer in his own rights. So
Absolutely.
that's exciting. But to the MLS's credit, Inter Miami aren't the only team impressing in the League's Cup so far. Philadelphia Union had a big win, 3-1 against Tijuana. Tijuana had 2 red cards in that game, so that helped things. But still, Philadelphia Union, they looked so composed. Like this looks like the Philadelphia Union I was expecting at the start of the season, and we've seen them match that intensity at times this season. And maybe sometimes they haven't looked as sharp as that because they've had players like Andre Blake and Damian Lowe and other guys, go out for international duty. Some players were injured, but Andre Blake as well, he had a penalty save in that game. The biggest shock result for me, especially since Minnesota United went down a red card in this first half, they beat Puebla 4-0. So there's a big factor that all these Leagues Cup games are playing in MLS home venues, but still, I think that we, as MLS fans, expected the MLS teams to do reasonably well against the Liga MX counterparts. I don't think we expected them to do this well. Abram, regarding the results you've seen so far in the Leagues Cup.
League Cup. Sorry, there's a plane right as you asked my name. I was like, oh
Of
god.
course.
But sure, I'll talk over the plane. I watched a lot of that Minnesota game, and Reynoso is out of this world with the technique that he possesses. I mean, I didn't think I thought he was because Puebla was doing a really good job in the beginning. I thought Minnesota was actually struggling, and Reynoso wasn't pressing at all in the midfield. But then when he would get the ball, he would just do something magical. He's like he has a similar impact to what Messi has on Miami. Obviously, he's not as good as Messi, but he has a similar profile with being a left-footed, tricky midfielder. Uh, and I mean, it really showed in the result. I didn't get to see the 4-1 thrashing. I left at halftime. But obviously, he had a big role to play in that. And I think that Minnesota are probably like stoked that he came back from Argentina and decided to play for them again.
Yeah, I think that Emir Reynoso is the integral piece that was missing in this Minnesota United team to make them a more free flowing attacking side. The rest of the team, there's a few other impressive attackers there, but no one really can do that role that Reynoso does as well as him. Devin, any other Leagues Cup scorelines that you want to talk about?
I don't really have other Leagues Cup scorelines. I just wanted to add quickly to the Inter Miami feud
Yeah.
since it does involve the San Jose Earthquakes. I feel like their Mount Rushmore, and I think we all suspect this, is not over. They just acquired an international slot from the San Jose Earthquakes in
Hmm.
transition with 150K in GAM. I don't know how we're going to use that GAM. There's a lot of potential, but we'll go into that a little bit later. So it does look like there is almost officially another player on the way. Who might that be? As you said, Luis Suarez, Andres Iniesta, who they've been connected with. Um, yeah, as you said, Ivan, they're only getting scarier, but now they have an international slot to move around with.
All right. And regarding the Women's World Cup, which has been underway for a week now, there's been a lot of interesting storylines there. A historic point for Jamaica's Reggae Girls with a scoreless draw against France. And the Philippines women are become the first Philippines team of any category in a senior tournament to get a win at the FIFA World Cup to even qualify. And then to mark that with a win against host New Zealand, that was an incredible accomplishment for them. U.S. women's national team got out to a strong, perhaps expected start, a 3-0 win against Vietnam. They certainly could have had a few more goals in that one, but ultimately they got the job done. And then the other juggernauts in this competition, such as Germany, Japan, Spain, and Brazil in particular, those had the most dominant performances against overmatched opponents, but still they did what they had to do and they won in convincing fashion. So it's been pretty fun. Obviously, with the tournament being held in Australia and New Zealand, it's made things pretty tricky if you have a regular work/sleep schedule to watch every game. But the ones I have watched have been pretty fun. Of course, USA versus Vietnam stands out, and we'll watch USA versus Netherlands later, probably when we're done recording. But one other game that I did watch that I found was very impressive, South Africa. They didn't ultimately win that game, but they went up 1-0. They scored, I believe, their second ever Women's World Cup goal in that game against Sweden, who are another powerhouse team. And South Africa looked pretty fearless. Ultimately, Sweden was able to, as many good teams do, find a way to win. They dug deep and they got their goals in the second half. But it was a really strong game. And that, along with the other game in that group, Italy versus Argentina coming down in the wire, I think that that'll be a group that I'll be keeping a close eye on because all the teams look pretty solid. Uh, how has your experience been watching the World Cup so far, Devin?
It's been great. It's been great. So I had to watch the U.S. women's national team over in Portland because I was there for the weekend and I went there for the Earthquakes game to visit family. And man, Portland really comes out. They really show out for their U.S. team.
Makes
They
sense.
they
And
came in
not only do they
numbers.
love soccer, but of course they have the Portland Thorns there, so they've had a long established women's soccer support base there too.
Absolutely, and I think they have what three to five players from the Portland Thorns playing for the U.S. national team. I think their youngest player, Sophia,
Sophia
she's been
Smith,
killing
oh,
it.
she's incredible. Yeah,
Yeah, Sophia Smith. Yeah, so
if they
shout out to
win
the
the
Portland
World
Thorns.
Cup, if the U.S. women's national team win this World Cup, the biggest X factor, or not really an X factor, but the biggest factor in their favor will probably be Sophia Smith. Just in the form that she's been in the NWSL, it's carried over perfectly to the international stage. She's a superstar. Uh, one name that Bay Area fans are probably looking at as well in that U.S. women's national team roster is Naomi Girma, the San Jose native. She's an incredible defender, and for someone so early in her career to be such a rock in defense and so reliable is a very big testament to her. And since you didn't mention Portland, the legendary Christine Sinclair as well. She's been fun to watch. Yeah, I don't think she scored yet in this tournament. Of course, Nigeria got a penalty save on Christine Sinclair in the opening match for Canada. But this being her last World Cup, this being Marta's last World Cup, we're talking about some big time players and Megan Rapinoe's last World Cup that have been so integral to growing interest in the women's game in the United States and abroad for the last 15 years. It's a big reason to continue to watch this World Cup because it is the end of an era, but kind of passing the torch over to the Sophia Smiths. Sam Kerr's kind of had the torch for a while now. Putellas as well. There's so many great players that will continue to carry on that legacy and that spotlight. Abram, have you been following the World Cup as well?
Yeah, I've been watching as many games as I can. The ones that are later are hard for me because I'm sick, so I go to sleep at like 8, 9. Um,
Oh yeah.
but I've really enjoyed the games that I've seen so far. I watched the highlights of the Jamaica game. It's crazy there wasn't a goal with how many highlights there were. Like they just kept battering each other. But yeah, a lot of
France hit
fun.
Woodward twice in the dying embers too.
Yeah, it's really fun. This tournament has been really entertaining. I think that if you're not watching for whatever reason, go ahead check it out. It's on. I watch it on Peacock. I don't know
Yeah.
where you guys watch it.
It's a combination of Peacock, Telemundo, Fox. Not all games are on all three of those services, so you do have to check the schedules. But they are pretty accessible, as well as in the Bay Area and San Jose Earthquakes. I know will be hosting watch parties for the U.S. Women's National Team games, and in the surrounding areas where you'd have San Jose Earthquakes. Games broadcasted by local businesses, I'm sure they would be happy to put on the women's national team games and World
Yeah,
Cup games as well.
I think Jack's Bar is one of those. Um, I think one of our supporters groups goes to Jack's Bar. So if you want to have
That's
fun with
that's one I was
some
thinking
other
of.
Earthquakes
Nice, thank
fans,
you.
yep.
Yep. So yeah, there's going to be more to talk about there. We'll have seen the USA Netherlands was one of the biggest group stage matches for this World Cup when we reconvene following the Tigres game. But for now, we're going to talk a little bit more about the Quakes again, starting with the Quakes 2 update from Abram.
Yeah, so there was a 1-1 draw at 90 minutes. I was excited about this game because we had a front three of on the left, Will Richmond on the right. We had Roberto Hadigan, who is a wonderful player. I always talk about Roberto Hadigan. Watch him, and then Useni Buddha was starting at striker. Um, and they didn't disappoint in terms of how fun they were to watch, and they made a lot of chances, but they couldn't convert. Similar to the first team, um, Buddha did end up scoring a goal. He made a great run behind. I think it was Oscar Verhoeven put the ball over the top for him to run onto, and then he um, very calmly just slotted it past the keeper, no problems. It was a very good pass by Verhoeven. It was something that you would expect a midfielder to do, but he is obviously a defender. Very cool for him. He's 16, 17. One to watch, definitely. I think that he will at some point play right back for the San Jose Earthquakes first team. And Sunny Buddha, obviously scored that. And then we unfortunately conceded in the second half. Um, some people blame Eric De La Soto. He is the Quakes 2 second keeper. Uh, and he is a soldier of a person. Like, if you've ever met him, I haven't personally met him, but I've seen him talk to people around me. He's such an integral figure to the Quakes 2 squad. You could tell by his personality and how much the other players respect him. And I think that mentality that he has really came in handy later in the game when they went to penalty shootouts. For those who don't know, I'll repeat it again. Every game that ends in a tie goes to a penalty shootout after 90 minutes. No extra time, just straight to a shootout. Ivan, you're muted.
I was just saying, familiarize yourself with the rule, listeners, with the Leagues Cup as well. Get used to it for that and MLS Next Pro.
Right. And I personally I enjoy it, especially when we keep winning them. Eric Del Cerro made two back-to-back saves. The second one was particularly uh, scary. He saved it and then it went up in the air and it was like had some spin on it and it was coming back, but he didn't give up and he just swatted it out of the sky. And so he saved two in a row, and the Quakes managed to score all five, I believe, and that won us. Actually, they scored four because they didn't need to score the fifth. Cruz Medina scored the last one and won the match for a 2 points that the Quakes 2 definitely need. they haven't had as strong of a season as they would hope, especially considering the squad that they have. We've gotten very unlucky quite a few times. I think that their attack has some issues with personnel. Um, we might see some players be moved on. I can't, disclose too much on here. I don't want to out anyone's, news before they do. But anyways, yeah, that's my Quakes 2 update for today's podcast.
It feels good to finally beat St. Louis. Yeah, they kind of owned the senior team this year, home and away. So thanks, Quakes, too, for getting it done. And yeah, penalties are always nerve wracking when the team you care about is involved in them, but it's much about confidence and experience as anything else. So if these players get a chance to play a U.S. Open Cup match in 2024 and it comes down to penalties, I feel a little bit better about that situation. We also have some exciting transfer news. We'll talk a little bit about Eya Akinola. So many of you probably remember him from when he first broke through, and he was very prolific. And USA and Canada were both vying for him to come to their camp and be captained by them. Ultimately, he represents Canada internationally. He's since kind of cooled off. He hasn't really had an easy season so far, neither individually or as a team. If you're not following Toronto FC, they are just above Inter Miami in the Eastern Conference standings, which is not a great place to be. Many of their key players, including Michael Bradley, Victor Vasquez, and several others, have been injured throughout significant parts of the season. They've also been dealing with suspensions and call-ups as well, to the point where both Sean Johnson and Tomas Romero were called up for the Gold Cup, so they're down to the third-string keeper for about a few weeks. It's been a really tough situation in Toronto. So a lot of players have been moved in and out recently to try to uh, figure out what the best path for Toronto forward in a season that's now for them about damage control. And I think a fresh start could be good for Akinola. We identified in this podcast that one of the biggest moves that could be made for the Quakes in regards to improving depth would be another option off the bench in that winger or forward position. And I think that Akinola kind of fits that situation in terms of team role. He's not going to be asking to start. He knows he's probably not going to start right away, given how cemented our front three are. But he's going to get minutes. He's going to come off the bench probably every game. And if maybe a different environment, a different system, Luchi Gonzalez could get the best of him. So, Devin, what are your thoughts on Ayo Akinola?
I've been a fan of Akinola since his homegrown days. Obviously, this year he hasn't had such a successful stint. Breaking down the transfer, Toronto collects another international slot, but thinking about it, he is a lone player for the rest of the season. So I am a bit cautious because we're beyond halfway through the season. He doesn't really get much time to flow with the team or slowly bring himself into the team's chemistry. And I'm kind of hoping that this is going to be a potential transfer fee down the road, because I just don't see him gelling quickly with the team. Although I do agree with Akinola's his quote saying, that how much dedication Leach and Lucci have given him, and how much praise that they've given him before the transfer. They really wanted this guy. So the fact that Lucci and Leach are saying this, I do have high hopes.
Yeah, loans are risky. Sometimes you have a Rodriguez situation where we are able to keep him a little bit longer than the original loan expiration date was expected to be. But when they end, like Alanis, you have to have a backup plan, or Chofis, it restructured the way that Quakes were approaching a season. So with Akinola, I do feel like this is a situation where if it works out for the Quakes, And Toronto are perhaps facing a big shakeup in roster, as many unsuccessful MLS teams usually experience from one season to another after a bad season. That it could be beneficial for both parties, for Quakes to make it permanent and then Toronto to get even more assets back to continue restructuring their roster. Abram, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think from what I've seen, the highlights on YouTube and the ones that the Quakes have posted, he seems like a pacey, physical player, like similar to Cade Cowell. I'm sure he's not quite as fast because Cade is a freak of nature. But I think if we have someone in that profile who can finish, as Akinola is known to be able to do, um, I think that can only help our attack. I don't know how often he's played on the left. To be honest, I looked up his FIFA card to kind of get an example. That's my research. It said he plays at striker and center forward, so like a second striker. Um, and I didn't see left wing, so I'm not sure if that's something he's comfortable with. But if worst case scenario, he's back up to Jeremy Abobasi, who plays a lot of minutes, I think that he would be better as a backup striker than Usaini Buddha, who we've seen play there, more often than anyone else. And I think he's a great backup option at striker. I think that he provides a lot of pace. He's very physical, and that's very exciting. I think that, like Devin said, if Leach is happy with this guy, if Leach says he likes him, I like him. I trust Leach. He's. I don't think I can say he's done any wrong so far. I would have to think about it, but I don't have time right now. But Leach has done a really good job, so I trust him. Um, so those are my thoughts on it. I have to see him play for us first, though.
I would like to bring up one other thing, and Abram can attest to this. The San Jose Earthquakes. I sent out a tweet the other day, and I asked for a Rodriguez extension. Considering his extension was until June, it's beyond June. We're now at July. He's playing matches in July. I asked the Earthquakes for a extension tweet
Announcement.
and for an extension announcement. I don't remember exactly what it said. You have the screenshot, but
Yeah.
they said, I said please in the tweet, and they're like, only because you said please, and then they deleted it like 2 seconds later. So
Yeah.
it sounds like there is something coming for Rodriguez.
This was the tweet that was shown to everyone. It was like everyone who has their notifications on saw this tweet, which I'm sure was an accident. I don't think they would have done that on purpose. And then
I will put it on the screen for editing purposes.
I clicked it immediately, and I went down and I saw I was there replying to Devin. I was like, holy crap! So I screenshotted it immediately, and then everyone else who saw that and clicked on it hadn't seen the tweet. So it's just me and Devin basically who saw that tweet. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think all I'll say about that social media interaction is that having met a few of the people who do the social media for the San Jose Earthquakes, I have a feeling who that might be, but that's about as much as I can say.
Yeah. I just hope they don't get in trouble for saying that. That's all I hope.
Yeah, I hope not. They're a really great team. They do a great job providing, with sports Twitter, you have to have that fine balance between like giving the fans what they want, having fun, and then of course like following certain guidelines. I think they strike it just as well as any other social media sports group that I can think of. But speaking of Leach, this comes from Alex Morgan's Twitter. Leach says that the Quakes would need to move pieces around in order to fit another new signing within the salary cap this window. Not quite as simple as a one-for-one swap, but that's the gist. He says he's definitely looking for ways to improve the roster, but made no promises. So that's the message that Chris Leach left the media with at the most recent press conference, addressing potential transfers beyond Akinola for the remainder of the season. And it has fans, frustrated. I'm sure Leach was hoping that it would placate the fans, saying it's like, look, we've done as much as we can. We'll do our best to continue to make more moves, but there's only so much we can do. It kind of has the opposite effect, especially because we look over at LAFC Miami, and several other teams who have been able to make flashier moves, bigger moves, impactful moves. And, Quakes fans view this as an opportunity to not just make this a playoff run and get to the first round, but maybe go for a deep run. And can the roster as constructed make a deep playoff run? It's hard to say that because we saw them trip up at the first hurdle this time in the Leagues Cup. So it is a reasonable situation that causes concern for Quakes fans. But Abram, what do you make of that statement in this situation?
Um, I think that it means we might be seeing more moves because I think that. Um, so here's what I think. I think that we will be seeing players move out. I think
Mm,
that. Uh, I think I don't know who might be leaving, but I think that it's weird that Mensa has not been playing. Considering how much we pay him, I think that we might be moving him on. Which obviously, I love Jonah, and I would love to see him stay. But if Lucci is not going to play him, then there's no point. Um, Other than having like the best third center back in the league, which is just not worth it.
it may also
Uh,
mean that if Mensa is meant to be the new backup, if we're going to play Beeson ahead of him, it could mean that he's not expecting Nathan back this season either. So that's another factor too.
right, and I've heard like about a month ago, I heard Nathan is 2 months out from returning, so he's close. I don't think we're going to see him this season, but he's getting better. So if
Yeah.
anyone who hasn't heard anything about that, rest assured. Um, I think that this FO wants to make signings. I think that they want to have a competitive roster. I think they know. I think they understand what's wrong. I think that us fans looking at this aren't the only ones seeing it and being like, we lack a consistency at left wing. They know. They say they
Yeah.
have all the analytics, they have all the video, they know, and so they want to improve just as much as we want them to improve because they're unlike us, their lives are on the line, like their livelihoods, like their jobs and stuff. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, their wages.
exactly. So I think that we will be seeing moves. Unfortunately, one of them might be Tommy Thompson. I don't want to see him go. I would like to just have
Stas
him
just
just
logged off this podcast. He's not going to listen to the rest of this.
can
Tommy,
like
stay.
just Tommy just retire and just hang out at the stadium with us. Just
Yeah.
I, I don't want to see Tommy go, but I understand. I think Baldissimo is someone who hasn't made a huge impact this season. Whether it's off the bench, whether he's had to be backup. I think that I mean, obviously, I'm biased, but I really like Cam Sealy, and Edwin Mendoza is a player who is starting to garner some attention from European teams. Edwin Mendoza is a center defensive mid for the Quakes too, for anyone who doesn't know, and he is one of our newest homegrowns, along with Chance Cowell and Oscar Verhoeven. I think that in 2 years, he could be, in the running for that midfield slot. He plays with such grace, and he's so smart, and he's brave to be able to win the ball back. But Cam Sealy is more physically ready now, so I don't think there's much of a need for Michael Baldissimo, if I'm being honest. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, with all those things being said, it's just I think that we will be seeing moves outwards, and then maybe before the end of the season, we'll bring one or two more guys in to replace those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So,
agree. Chris
yeah.
Leach. Oh, sorry, I'm going to make one more point
Yeah.
here. Chris Leach did mention either in the press conference or he mentioned it recently, but he said in a couple of weeks he will release a hint or drop a hint in terms of a new signing. So I think Abrams on the nose here in that I think we're going to be releasing a couple of players. There might be a couple of outward sales and a new player expected in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, so maybe I'm just reading into this the wrong way, and like some of the reactions on social media, shocker, were reactionary. But yeah, it does mean that it's something that we do have to come to terms with. Similar conversation we had a few years ago on the back of when the Quakes did make the playoffs, but they were eliminated by Sporting Kansas City. It's like, yeah, if you want to make that next step, it could mean, some other players going that did contribute a lot to get to this point where we're at right now. But in order to get to the next step, a roster shakeup might be needed. Of those players that were mentioned that could be moved out, Mensa's the only one that I still consider could be first team quality, even if he currently isn't in the first team. So, in that sense, he would probably be the player that, if the Quakes were to try to make a move, they would get the most for him in terms of, trying to fund the move to replace him. And then that would be interesting to see what position that would be in as well, uh, whether it be a one for one change or whether it be a more interesting exit and entrance there. But I guess this does give reason to believe that the Quakes aren't done yet, and that is exciting as well. I'm not saying it's going to be Tecatito Corona. That would be fun, but of course, despite the links to the Quakes, the Galaxy are always also involved. So, you know, it doesn't take a genius to realize that Galaxy are the favorites in that situation regarding a Mexican international player of Tecatito Corona's caliber. But that's, what we can speculate on for now. But what we do know for sure is that Christian Espinoza was extended until 2025. Um, Before we talk a little bit and close things out on Espinoza and what him uh, signing that contract means for the future of this Quakes team, Devin, what are you going to be looking for in this game against Tigres this Sunday?
I think we need to go back to that 3-5-2 defensively. Defensively, we've been absolutely solid. We had zero goals conceded, a shutout versus Seattle, and only conceded one goal against, while we were down to 10 men against LAFC. So there's clear evidence that the 3-5-2 was working for us. So I'd love to see that again. Um, Obviously, with the new incoming transfer of Akinola, I'm not sure if he's allowed to play in Leagues Cup because we've already presented the roster for the tournament. Um, so that's unfortunate that we don't have that necessary depth for the rest of the league. Um, Another side note in that we already have negative 2 goal difference, so we're playing a club who's already won a trophy this season, and they're also top contender for Liga MX. I think they've won 5 of the last 8 Liga MX uh, championships. So,
Juggernauts,
you
yep.
know, absolute powerhouse team. So if we win, that will not only make a statement for us. If we win with more than 1 goal differential, which I think we're capable of, we'll also need results to go our way versus Portland and Tigres to move forward. We'd also want Tigres to win against Portland by a multi-goal difference, like Portland did to us. And I think at that point we'd have absolutely a certain chance in going through. Um, yeah, that's my take on it.
Abram, what are you going to be looking for in that game?
Um, I guess a few things. I'm hoping that we can make a statement. I think that we were the better team against Portland. Um, I think that when you look at the highlights, though, it doesn't really show, um, how much better than we were because it's mostly Portland highlights. I just think that the reason for that is because we struggle to make that final ball, into the box. I think that if we can, get more chances in those more crucial areas, then something will happen. I think Abobasi is a very capable finisher. If he could just stay around the box, um, then we have a pretty good chance. It also, depends on how fit Abovisi and Espinosa and Skane are after getting injured. It's very possible we might just use this match as a throwaway match to get some fitness for youngsters. If we don't think Christian is up for it, then I don't want to see him go out there. I don't think that if he's not 100% as a coach, I don't put him out there. I put Buddha, Will Richmond, someone else. I don't put our best player, most important player on the field and risk him even more. So yeah, we'll have to see. I don't think Lucci's ever one to say that we ever gave up a match, uh, and he'll never tell us beforehand. But we'll just have to wait and see.
I'm conflicted going into this match because a part of me does want to see the Quakes approach this game the same way as Portland did in terms of like seriousness and the strength of lineup, if possible. Not saying rush players back if they're not at appropriate fitness level, because it is a great measuring stick. This will be the first time in 10 years that the Quakes have played a Mexican opponent in a meaningful competition. I get it's not the CONCACAF Champions League. This is the next best thing until we can qualify for the CONCACAF Champions League somehow. So I do not take this opportunity lightly. I look forward to being at the game and seeing one of the biggest teams in Mexico come to PayPal Park. It's going to be a great atmosphere for sure. I'm sure there will be a lot of Tigres support because there is a lot of support for Tigres in California. They'll descend onto this game and it will make for a fun atmosphere for sure. Um, but looking at the big picture, you really have to thread the needle to get to the next round at this point, to get a perfect result against Tigres and to have a shot. If we have key players that are not able to go, we can't just fit a square peg in a round hole and potentially cause a explosion and derail our MLS season as a result, even if we do have 3 weeks if it all goes to crap, to get the pieces back together and start again on August 20th against Vancouver. So I won't be mad if we have a strong lineup. I won't be mad if we don't have a strong lineup. Ultimately, this is a rare opportunity to play against Tigres. I want to see the Quakes go back to what works. I would like to see that 3-5-2. I would like to see them be very patient in the build-up and also learn from their mistakes in the Portland game. If Vander's going to score a goal from that far out, clog up the midfield, be more aggressive in that midfield battle. The defensive line, I've had very little complaints about them this season, but it's that line in front of them that sometimes we need to win those battles a little bit more frequently. But ultimately, regardless of what happens, this is a unique experience, the first ever Leagues Cup. Quakes get their opportunity to play against not just a Mexican team, but the strongest one right now. And it's going to be one to remember, hopefully for positive reasons, come Sunday. It will be an 8 p.m. Scheduled start time, so it's going to be even later than typical Quakes games usually are in that 7:30 p.m.-ish time slot. So if you are working that Monday, I apologize. It's going to be a long night, perhaps, but it should be a fun experience for sure. And there will be more fun memories to be had for the next couple years. Christian Espinoza signed through 2025, and it's a big one. He'll be 30 by the time that contract ends up, so he's pretty much said, hey, I want my prime years to be spent with the San Jose Earthquakes. I enjoy the environment. I enjoy playing here in this system with these players under this coach. And I want to continue to achieve great things with this club. And now we owe it to Espinoza to continue to make smart moves in each transfer window possible, continue to surround him with the best players. Because if we do have a star player on this team, it is Espinoza. He's the all-star. We have to build around him, even though that this is a team that has many different focal points for different reasons. But as Abram said earlier in this podcast, this is a completely different team without Espinoza. In similar ways, we talked about Reynoso from Minnesota, obviously Messi in Miami. The same can be said for Espinoza. So, Abram, your thoughts on that contract extension?
Uh, I just think that every team needs an Argentinian number 10 because god dang is it awesome.
Yeah, I
You
could go on
should.
and on. Almada for Atlanta United.
Yeah, exactly. Um, I mean, yeah, Espinosa has already cemented himself as a San Jose Earthquakes legend, unless he goes to the frickin' LA Galaxy or something like
Cough,
that.
Donovan, cough.
Exactly. No, but he's obviously a fantastic player, um, and I think that he would, if you like put an 11 on paper of the best Earthquakes players of all time, he is the right wing. Uh, he's first and second choice. I don't care. I don't care if you say George Best. No, it's Christian Espinosa. Um, and
Wow.
I'm really glad that he feels the same trust in us as we do in him, and wants to continue playing here.
It always feels good when a player chooses a team that's not a typical destination team, regardless of what league this is, or if we're talking MLS, MLB, NBA. That always feels good. So we have to cherish that and continue to get around him. And I know that sometimes people are hesitant to get a jersey with a player's name on the back. I hope no one feels any hesitation to get an Espinoza jersey. That's definitely should be a top choice for anyone looking for a new Quakes jersey. Devin, your final thoughts on Espinoza?
I hope he stays here till the end of his career. I hope he stays here till he retires. Um,
Yeah.
he mentioned that his kids love it here. He's had his kids in San Jose. He has no desire to go elsewhere. So I do hope he stays here um, past 2025. Hopefully till he's like 33 years old, if not even further.
Yep. I, we're just really happy to have Espinoza. He's been a consummate professional, a great personality, a great player, a leader, works well with everyone else in this team. I think that with him, we're certain that the rock bottom moments of the San Jose Earthquakes teams in recent memory, that's not going to resurface. It's just a question of how far can we take this team by building around Espinoza, because he's certainly a player that we can see him winning the MLS Cup. We can see him winning trophies. But in order for the Quakes to be that team where he does win it with, obviously it's going to have to be him for that to be a possibility through 2025. Uh, we're going to have to continue to make great moves around him. But the future, despite this 2-0 loss of Portland Timbers, it still feels bright. It still feels like a team worth looking into. So let's see what happens against Tigres. Let's enjoy the game. And then after that, we either have a round of 32 knockout matchup to look forward to, or we have 3 weeks to reassess and then make a final push to ensure that we have the best playoff spot possible for the 2023 MLS Cup playoffs. And that's all for us today. Thank you for joining us for the hour or so we've been recording. So it'll be Devin, Abram, myself, and possibly Abel back with us for the next podcast after the Tigres game. That'll probably be coming to you that Monday or Tuesday after the Quakes Tigres game. Thank you for joining us. Have a good rest of your day.